happening? What's shaking? What's going on? Well, this is Andy coming to you again from here at Andy's World of Bass. And today I'm going to do a little video for you and just tell you about my personal style and playing technique and kind of how that came to be. And hopefully it'll be encouraging to you, because I think that everybody should invent their own style of playing. And oftentimes it's born out of necessity, and that's certainly the case with me. You see, I have these little short stubby fingers, so when I first started playing, I realized quickly that doing the big far stretches, it just wasn't going to work for me. It was too painful, and it just was very unnatural to me. So I tend to keep my hand really, kind of closed, and as out of that necessity, I've always played with a lot of the kind of pentatonic box patterns. I use my pinky finger a lot as opposed to my third finger. And I also do shifts in places that just accommodate the size of my hands better, That's just kind of like how I started playing in the first, 4 or 5 years of my playing development. And, by 1988, 1989, I pretty much was settled into the way that I play. And not much has changed since then. Certainly, I've become more experienced, and I've been able to kind of diversify my abilities and my understanding of a wide variety of different styles, and understanding the different characteristics of different styles, and been able to kind of infuse my style of music into a lot of, or my style of bass playing into a lot of different forms of music, whether it be playing in different types of genres of bands that play covers and stuff, or for the most part, throughout the late 80s and all the way up until about 10 years ago, I played in various original bands that were making CDs and albums and going out and touring them, and just kind of doing that trying to make it thing, and or just doing session work, hired to work with different singers, songwriters, and so on. So that's kind of like the basic nuts and bolts of my style. The other thing that came out of necessity because of my short fingers, is that I don't reach around and up and over and play on the tips of my fingers, like, I just don't play like that. I tend to keep my fingers flat across the fingerboard because it's just more comfortable. And I also play with all of my finger, from the tip of my finger all the way to the second knuckle, in terms of my fretting. And that really kind of became a signature part of what my style is, that kind of greasy. I'm not just up on the tips. I'm using the whole finger, from the tip all the way down to the knuckle. So that's another important kind of element that makes me sound like me. The other thing that I tend to do, which is also not proper technique at all, is that I do what they call, grabbing it like a baseball bat, and I reach my thumb over. That was born out of necessity as well, because I just wanted to be able to play as clean as possible without any overring. So it's just a form of muting. So I tend to, when I'm down in the low register here, I tend to have my thumb over the top, and I'm just gently touching that B string, and I'm preventing it from ringing. So when I'm playing on the E, A, D, and G strings, the B is not making any racket. Especially when I'm doing any kind of slapping. See how that thumb is over there? Well, typically you would you know, that would be improper technique. But I've said it before and I'll say it again, I don't really give a shit about proper technique, because all I care about is enjoying playing bass and getting the job done best of my ability. I don't think that the improperness of my technique has in any way inhibited me to be utilized in my career as a bass player, because I've done a lot of session work and toured and done a lot of gigging, like, thousands and thousands of gigs. And I've even gone around the world and taught about musicianship and stuff. So, what I guess my main point is, work with what you have and play the way that you want to play. Certainly there's some important, very important fundamentals of music theory that need to be known. And I think that that's always a work in progress, where I'm always learning more about harmony and understanding ways to be more melodic and to really kind of creatively outline the harmony and throughout the song form. Although, again, going back to way back in the beginning, and I've heard Chuck Rainey say this too, I tend to be, a real kind of a 1-5-8 kind of shapes, simply because that works over just about any chord. And then if I want to infuse something that really sells harmony, then I just, it's a matter of incorporating the major third or the minor third. It instantly makes a huge difference, just being able to utilize the third in there. And then, of course, the dominant 7 is a big one. Major scale. That's a major 7. Right? Most rhythm and blues music, soul music, American rock music, country and bluegrass and all different kinds of stuff like that is typically defined by a tonality that utilizes the dominant 7, which is the 7th scale degree, lower to half step. That's a major 7. That's a dominant 7. And you instantly hear it in. You know what I'm saying? So, there's a lot of different bass players that have influenced me over the years. Of course, there's many, many, many. And from each of them, I took the things that I liked about their playing, and I tried to do it in my own way. And I never really got so heavily immersed in one particular player that it became all-consuming. I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, because I know people, like, for example, that have spent 2 or 3 years just studying Jaco, and they have come out the other side really having a great understanding of rhythm and groove and feel and tone and harmony and melody and all the things that come from that kind of intensive study on one player. I certainly love Jaco and always have and always will, and I got some things from him, and particularly that comes down to my right hand playing. Muted 16th notes and ghost noting. Now, I'm not saying that sounds like Jaco. I'm just saying that when I'm doing that, that came from that influence, and I made it my own way of doing it. Same thing goes for the slap bass stuff. I played a lot in the Louis Johnson style early on because I had the Starlicks VHS tape for Louis Johnson, and I had one, and then I wore it out, and then I got another one. And I don't know whatever happened to it. I think I lent it to a student and never got it back, but 20 years ago or something. But I started out being heavily into Louis Johnson. That was my introduction into the world of slap bass. And then from there, you know, it was kind of like Stanley Clarke, and then somewhere in the mid 80s, early 80s, 84, something like that, I got hip to Victor Wooten. And, you know, he took it to the next level of stratosphere. I was actually, things really changed for me when Johnny B. Gaden from the Albert Collins Band taught me how to double thumb. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. And doing the triplets, you know. Those are all triplets. Back of the, back of the, back of the, back of the, back of the. Nowadays, everybody can do that. It's no big deal. But back in those days, you know, those were kind of the advances in slap bass that were really kind of, you know, benchmarks in the direction of where it was going. From there, I started taking it and doing things like six tuplets and adding the double plucking, double popping. And doing double popping on one string. And that's a real tasteful and nice thing that you can do. You know, when you use all this stuff in a tasteful way, it can really be complementary to the music. And slap bass, you know, typically it can have a little bit of a bad rap. I think the only reason it gets a bad rap is because people don't do it well, and they try and do it when they haven't really developed their timing and their tone. And that's kind of like the last thing I want to say in this video, is that I always focused on the feel. Focusing on the feel, and then as that being the most important thing, like making the bass line really feel good in the track and really feel good in the band, really laying into a deep pocket with the drummer. And the way I kind of tend to be most of the time is right up on top of the beat. Jazzers sometimes, when they're swinging, they're like right up in front, you know, a little bit, you know, like they're really pushing it, and they're kind of getting out in front in terms of where, if this is the center, they're like maybe a little bit in front, you know. And then like the New Orleans kind of feel is like, that's kind of like in the backseat, on the backside of that. And, you know, where I tend to be is kind of like right up on top of every beat, like right up on top, you know. You know, it's right up on top. So that's kind of where I put it a lot of the time, and that really makes my style of playing and my player personality shine through in terms of really driving the band. You know, I never really thought I'd ever agree with Jeff Berlin. Excuse me. Never thought I'd really agree with Jeff Berlin on too much. But this whole thing about him saying, you know, you don't need to use a metronome and everything like that, there's a little piece of that that I actually kind of sort of agree with, because I never really did either. You know, I established a human body clock. And like, I know where the one is, and I know where the feel is, and you know, I always practiced. I guess that's why I do a lot of the ghost, a lot of that ghost noting and a lot of that percussive playing and stuff like that. It's because I'm trying to play the drums and the bass on the bass, you know, on just the bass. And practicing just with no backing track and no drum beat or anything like that, there is a benefit that comes from that in terms of individual body clock development. So in a way, I kind of agree with Jeff on that, at least that piece of that. Certainly playing with, an established tempo, metronome, or whatever is very beneficial, especially if you're trying to learn something and gradually increase the tempo. So if you're trying to learn something that's challenging and you start slowly and then work your way up to tempo, that's a mistake that a lot of musicians tend to make, is that they try and do something too fast before they can execute all the components, all the mechanics of any given piece of music or any given exercise or whatever. Is they try and do it too fast before they're able to actually get a tone on every individual note, within whatever it is that they're trying to do. So it starts to sound like you can hear the first note clearly and you can hear the last note, but it sounds like everything in the middle. You hear the first note, you hear the last note, but you don't hear what happens in the middle. You know what I'm saying? You need to be able to hear every note. Every note has to have a purpose, and you have to be able to land every single component and land all the moves. So, that kind of defines my style in a nutshell and how I approach it. And I hope that helps you a little bit. Certainly, take a little bit from here, take a little bit from there, take what you want, leave the rest, do your own thing, and hopefully you'll be able to find your own unique voice and your own player personality, your own style. Typically, it's kind of derived from some core elements, some core ingredients. For me, it was rhythm and blues and funk and R&B and soul that kind of created the fundamentals of my style. And then the other very important piece of my style was that in the first 5 years that I played, I was really heavily into Steve Harris and Pete Way from UFO and just all kinds of great late 70s and early 80s metal bands, new wave of British heavy metal, things like that. And that was a great building blocks for what would become my style eventually, because it helped me develop a lot of good stamina and strength and endurance. So, that whole triplet thing. Triplety, back it, that kind of a feel, that kind of a galloping feel was so prevalent in all that music. And then, of course, the other one is just being able to play driving grooves, driving eighth notes, driving quarter notes, driving 16th notes, whatever, but just being able to play even pulse lines. There's a very famous song right now that every bass player on the planet is learning, and they should, that has that driving 16th note feel in the intro. Well, there's been many, many, many more that came before that, Rocco, and the list is very, very long of that 16th note feel. But that also goes for different strokes for different folks, you know what I'm saying? Everyday people, that's an eighth note pulse. And then just quarter notes. And then make it funky. Rock steady. So all those kind of driving bass line grooves are the kind of things that when they hit the amplifier and when they hit the mains and when they hit the PA, and that groove goes out there, people are just bouncing. Whether it's quarters, eighths, sixteenths, dotted note. those kind of grooves. There's nothing to it, but there's a lot to it. It's one of those things where it's all about the feel and all about the placement. So, I think I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you for watching this video. Thanks for watching all the videos. We'll see you around, and we'll see you next time. All right, friends. Peace.